My brother's wedding cost $87,000. I know exactly what it cost because I'm the one who paid for it. I just didn't realize it at the time. The reception was held at Whitmore Estate in Cedarfield, Virginia, an outdoor terrace with string lights wrapped around every pillar, 130 guests seated at round tables draped in ivory linen, a 5-tier cake displayed on a pedestal near the French doors, and a live jazz trio playing beneath a canopy of white hydrangeas. My stepfather stood at the head table with a wireless microphone, his chest puffed out like a man who'd just closed the deal of his life. And he had. He looked across the room and said into that microphone, in front of everyone, "This is the greatest gift Donna and I have ever given." The room erupted in applause. I didn't clap. I was sitting at table 9 with my partner Elliot, wearing a burgundy dress I'd bought on clearance for $32, my late grandmother's gold studs in my ears. And I looked at my stepfather across that room of champagne flutes and orchid centerpieces, and I said it just loud enough for our table to hear. "Go check your front door." His face went gray. 18 hours later, my mother and stepfather would open their front door to find a foreclosure notice tucked beneath the welcome mat, and they'd finally understand that the daughter they'd taken from was the only reason they still had a house to lose. Welcome back. I'm Priya Anand. I'm 31 years old. I'm a title examiner at a real estate law firm in Cedarfield, Virginia. And this is the story of what happened when I stopped being the family's silent safety net. I've worked at Holt and Callaway Real Estate Law for 7 years, started right out of my certification program at 24, scanning documents and pulling county records. By 26, I was handling title searches independently. By 28, Margaret Holt, the founding partner, 63 years old, a woman who keeps reading glasses on her wrist like a bracelet and addresses every client by last name, she let me run closings on my own. I sit across the table from buyers and sellers and lenders, and I make sure every line on every document is correct before a single pen touches paper. I catch forged notarizations, undisclosed liens, missing heir claims, easement violations. One time, I flagged a property whose seller had been dead for 11 years and nobody had noticed. Catching things is not a skill for me. It's a reflex. Which is why the thing I missed is still the hardest part of this story to tell. My grandmother, Leela Anand, purchased a 2-bedroom townhouse at 22 Birchwood Court in Cedarfield back in 2003. She paid off the mortgage in 2014. When she passed in 2021 at 79, her will was perfectly clear. The Birchwood property goes to Priya. I moved in 2 months after the funeral. I repainted the bedroom walls a deep sage green. I replaced the rusted bathroom fixtures. I paid the HOA dues, the property taxes, the homeowner's insurance. Elliot, 29, a plumber who runs his own one-man operation and has never once asked for recognition for anything he does, Elliot retiled the kitchen backsplash and replaced every faucet in the place. We made it ours. Leela's teak bookshelf stayed in the corner of the living room, still holding her collection of Tamil poetry and dog-eared recipe cards. Her photograph stayed on the windowsill. I never ran a title search on my own townhouse. In my line of work, the people who trust blindly are the ones who end up in the horror stories I file. I should have known better. My mother, Donna Anand Reeves, is 55. She grew up in a narrow row house in Roanoke with a leaky roof and a father who left when she was 9. She worked her way through community college on a cafeteria shift and a weekend retail job, met my stepfather Raymond at 26, and decided that steady was the same as safe. She has worked as a dental office receptionist in Cedarfield for 20 years. She has the phone voice of someone who has spent 2 decades absorbing other people's anxiety and reflecting calm back at them. My stepfather, Raymond Reeves, is 61. He spent 26 years as a shift supervisor at a packaging plant in Martinsville. Not glamorous work, but solid. He prided himself on never missing a day. He had a plaque. He had a good handshake and a firm opinion about being the man who kept things running. Then the plant closed its Virginia facility in 2020, and Raymond was handed a severance envelope and 2 weeks to clear his locker. He was 57. The rejections came fast. Every application returned with silence or a polite no. He told Donna everything was being sorted. He opened one credit card, then two, then a third. The mortgage started going late. He got a short-term deferral from the bank and convinced himself that was the same as solving the problem. Then there's my brother, Dev, 26, a graphic designer at a marketing agency in Richmond, engaged to Simone Vega, 25, a kindergarten teacher with a laugh you can hear from the next room over. Dev is sweet. He is genuinely kind. He still calls our mother every Sunday. He is also the one who needed protecting his whole life because in our family, that was the unspoken rule. Priya is fine. Priya handles things. Dev needs us. Leela was the only person who ever looked at that arrangement and said it out loud. She sat with me on the porch of the Birchwood townhouse the summer before she got sick, drinking cardamom chai from ceramic mugs, and she looked at me and said, "You are the one who carries things quietly, Priya, so I want you to have something solid under your feet." That was the townhouse. That was what she left me. Raymond Reeves was not a bad man. I need you to hold on to that because it matters for what comes next. He was a man who had built his entire identity around one word: provider. 26 years, never late, never absent, brought home a paycheck and told Donna they were fine. That was his whole vocabulary of love. Then the plant closed and suddenly he had no language left. Unemployment ran out. Savings drained. He didn't tell Donna about the credit cards. Not one. 15,000 became 28. 28 became 42. He paid the minimums when he could and put the past due notices in the drawer beneath his old union paperwork. Donna still believed things were fine because Raymond said they were fine, and she had been trusting that sentence for 32 years. When Leela died and left the townhouse to me, Raymond didn't see his stepdaughter's inheritance. He saw a family asset sitting idle. He told himself Leela would have wanted the family taken care of. He told himself the deed had never been officially transferred, so technically the estate still held title. He told himself that as executor, he had the authority to act on behalf of the estate. Each reasoning was small enough to swallow. That's how people who love you do the worst things. Not in one sudden betrayal, in a slow cascade of small justifications, each one just believable enough to make the next one easier. It was a November morning in 2020. I stopped by my parents' house on Sycamore Ridge Road to drop off a pot of dal I'd made. Raymond and Donna were out running errands. I let myself in with the spare key they kept beneath the ceramic elephant on the side porch. Same elephant since I was 15. I set the pot on the stove and noticed the stack of mail on the kitchen counter. 2 envelopes from Blue Ridge Federal. The phrase "past due" was printed across both in bold red. I opened them. Mortgage. 53 days behind. Total outstanding. $2,140 plus fees. I stood in that kitchen and did the math without paper. Raymond had been out of steady work for 7 months, a mortgage of roughly $1,000 a month on one cafeteria manager's income. He was underwater. I didn't call. I didn't leave a note. I drove home, opened my laptop, and set up an automatic transfer. $980 a month to Blue Ridge Federal, referencing Raymond Reeves' account number ending 5519. 3 months later, I added the homeowner's insurance premium, $195 a month. Total outlay, $1,175 every month. Nearly a third of my take-home pay as a title examiner. I told Elliot. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, looked at me steadily and said, "Your money, your call. I support you." I didn't tell Raymond. I didn't tell Donna. Raymond called the bank a few months later to check his balance, was told everything was current, and assumed the deferral had worked out in his favor. He never questioned the math. 4 years, 47 months, $55,225. I paid every cent and they had no idea I was on their statement. Dev proposed to Simone on New Year's Eve, down on one knee in the middle of her living room with her whole family watching on a video call. Raymond shook Dev's hand so hard and so fast that it told me everything I needed to know about how badly my stepfather needed something to celebrate. Donna had the Pinterest boards going within 48 hours. Whitmore Estate, the venue deposit alone was $14,000. The dress was from a boutique in Northern Virginia, $3,800. Florals, hydrangeas, and eucalyptus, $6,500. Catering for 130 guests, $19,000. A jazz trio, $4,000. Photography, $5,500. Rehearsal dinner, hotel blocks, invitations, favors, rentals, linens, cake. Another $25,000 in line items. Grand total, $87,000. I sat at their dining room table in January watching Donna calculate on her phone, and I said, "Mom, where's that coming from?" She waved her hand the way people wave away questions they've already decided not to answer. Raymond's handling it. Raymond sat at the other end of the table and did not look at me. Not then. And not when I felt the floor shift beneath me. The winter before the letter arrived was the most settled I had ever felt. The townhouse on Birchwood Court was mine in every way I understood that word. Sage green bedroom, Elliot's tiled kitchen, Leela's bookshelf in the corner, her photo on the windowsill. Margaret Holt pulled me into her office in February, closed the door, took off her glasses. She said she wanted to make me a senior title examiner, the first non-attorney in the firm's history to hold that title. I went home and ran the numbers. The raise would change things. Elliot and I had been talking about buying a house together, something with a small yard, maybe a garage for his tools. The Birchwood townhouse was worth around $178,000. No mortgage on it. Leela had paid it off years before she died. That was my asset, my only real one, the thing that made the next chapter possible. We sat on the couch with a bottle of wine and a calculator and mapped it out. Sell the townhouse, put $60,000 down, buy something on the north side with a spare room. I fell asleep that night with Elliot's arm around me and a plan I believed in. Plans are what you have before the certified letter arrives. It came on a Saturday in April. I was in the kitchen, barefoot, making coffee. White envelope, return address, Devereaux and Mills, attorneys at law, Arlington, Virginia. I didn't know the firm. Inside was a single-typed page. Dear occupant, pursuant to the recent conveyance of the property located at 22 Birchwood Court, Cedarfield, Virginia, this notice is issued on behalf of the new owners, Marcus and Teresa Fong, requesting that all current occupants vacate the premises no later than 30 days from the date of this letter. I read it on the kitchen floor. Then I sat down at Leela's old writing desk and pulled up the County Land Records website on my phone. I know that URL the way I know my own birthday. I type it 40 times a week. I search the property address. Chain of title loaded. 2003, Leela Anand purchases 22 Birchwood Court. Mortgage recorded. 2014, mortgage satisfied. 2021, Leela Anand deceased. Will filed with Cedarfield County Probate. Executor named Raymond Elliott Reeves. 2021 through 2025. No deed transfer recorded to Priya Anand. Title remained in the estate of Leela Anand. February 2025. Deed transfer from estate of Leela Anand to Marcus and Teresa Fong. Instrument signed by Raymond Elliott Reeves, executor. Sale price, $178,000. I sat at my grandmother's desk in my grandmother's townhouse and looked at my stepfather's name on a deed that should have had mine. He had sold it 2 months ago. The closing was in February. He had been sitting across our dining room table from me, nodding while Donna talked about floral arrangements, and he had already signed the papers and cashed the check. He sold my home. He said nothing. I drove to Sycamore Ridge Road without calling ahead. Raymond was in the backyard with a cup of coffee and no particular purpose. He looked up when he heard my car door. He knew. I could see it in his posture, the slight forward tilt of a man who has been rehearsing a conversation in his head for weeks and is finally out of time. "You sold my grandmother's house," I said. He didn't deny it. He set down his mug on the patio railing and said, "It wasn't your house, Priya. Leela left it to the family. The deed was never put in your name. As executor, I had legal authority over the estate." "I work in real estate law, Raymond. 8 hours a day. 6 years running. I know what executor authority means, and I know what fiduciary duty means, and what you did was not the second one." His mouth moved without producing anything useful. "The wedding?" he said finally. "We needed the money for Dev's wedding. You sold the home my grandmother left me to pay for a party. It's not a party. It's your brother's wedding, and where exactly do you expect me to live?" Raymond had no answer. He picked up his coffee mug and set it back down. The plaque on the garden wall behind him said, in weather-worn letters, "Martinsville Packaging, Supervisor of the Year, 2017. 3 years before the plant cut him loose. I found Donna in the kitchen making lunch. She turned from the counter with a paring knife in her hand and an expression that confirmed everything. She already knew. "Did you know Raymond sold my grandmother's townhouse?" She set the knife down very carefully. Then she picked up a dish towel and folded it twice, the precise folding of a woman buying seconds to choose her next sentence. "He said he found a way to pay for the wedding. He found a way. He sold the home Leela left to me specifically, in her will, the will I helped file." Donna dried her hands on the folded towel. "You have Elliot. You have your career. You have so much ahead of you. Dev needed this, and there it was, the family arithmetic written out in plain language. Priya has things, so we take from Priya. Dev needs things, so we give to Dev. The capable daughter is a resource. The beloved son is a priority." I didn't raise my voice. I don't raise my voice. I work in a field where the people who keep calm are the ones who win. I walked out. I drove back to the townhouse I had 29 days left in, and I started thinking the way I think at work, in sequences, in timelines, in the cold, clear language of recorded instruments and public filings. Back at the desk, I opened my banking app. There it was. Automatic transfer, Blue Ridge Federal, Raymond Reeves Mortgage, $980. Next scheduled transfer, May 1st. Below it, Virginia Farm Bureau Homeowners Insurance, Raymond Reeves Policy, $195. Next scheduled, May 12th, 4 years, 47 months, $55,225. I had paid more into my mother and stepfather's mortgage than they had paid themselves since the plant closed, and they had used money from selling my home to throw a wedding I hadn't been consulted about. I hovered over the cancel button. I pressed it. Confirmed. I pressed the second one. Confirmed. Done. Elliot had been sitting in his truck outside, giving me space. He came in and read my face and sat down on the couch next to me. "What happens now?" he asked. I set my phone face down on the cushion. I know exactly what happens next. Foreclosure timelines are literally my job. Elliot sat with that for a moment. "They still have no idea you've been paying." I didn't look at him. "They're about to find out." I moved out in 3 weekends. Elliot rented a cargo van for Leela's teak bookshelf, which we wrapped in moving pads and carried down the stairs ourselves because there was no version of reality in which I was handing that piece of furniture to strangers. Her photograph went into a padded envelope I held on my lap the entire drive. Everything else went into boxes I'd collected from the liquor store on Main Street. Margaret Holt offered me the vacant room on the second floor of the law office above the conference room. One window, a cast iron radiator that clunked through the night, a bathroom that smelled of old paper and cleaning solution. "It's nothing fancy," Margaret said, "but it's free, it's clean, and as a licensed attorney, I can personally guarantee the lease is airtight." I moved in with 2 suitcases, a French press, and Leela's photo on the narrow nightstand. Elliot kept the bookshelf at his apartment. We'd figure out the rest once the dust settled. Dev called on a Thursday, excited, a little nervous. "Priya, I want to ask you something." "Will you be a bridesmaid?" My stomach dropped. He didn't know. He had no idea his sister's home had been sold to pay for his venue deposit and his fiancée's dress and the jazz trio that would play during cocktail hour. He thought Raymond had savings. He thought the $87,000 was the accumulated dividend of decades of careful planning. He thought families were supposed to work this way. "Of course, Dev," I told him. He immediately started talking about dress colors. I held the phone away from my ear and looked at Leela's photo on the nightstand. She had the expression she always had in photographs, clear-eyed, patient, the look of a woman who understood exactly what the people she loved were capable of. I ran the full title examination on 22 Birchwood Court the following week, not a quick online lookup. The complete package, chain of title going back to original construction, recorded instruments, probate filings, lien searches, every document that touched that piece of property from the day the foundation was poured. It took most of an afternoon. Here's what it confirmed. 2003. Leela Anand acquires 22 Birchwood Court, mortgage with Blue Ridge Federal. 2014, mortgage satisfied in full. 2021. Leela Anand dies. Will filed with Cedarfield County Probate Court. Specific bequest in the will reads, "I leave the townhouse property at 22 Birchwood Court, Cedarfield, Virginia, to my granddaughter Priya Anand, executor named Raymond Elliott Reeves, from 2021 to 2025. No transfer to Priya Anand, no transfer to anyone. Title sits in the estate collecting dust, while the executor who was supposed to distribute it according to the will instead distributed it to his own bank account." February 2025, deed from estate of Leela Anand to Marcus and Teresa Fong, $178,000, signed by Raymond Elliott Reeves, executor. I printed the chain of title, 17 pages, pulled the probate file, pulled the will, stapled everything together and labeled the folder Annan Birchwood in black marker, $178,000. That was the market rate for my grandmother's love. Raymond took it and bought a champagne toast and hydrangeas and hotel room blocks for out-of-town guests. I know Virginia foreclosure law the way most people know their morning commute. I teach the intake version of it to every new associate who joins the firm in the fall. The timeline is not complicated. Month 1 after a missed payment. Late fee, form letter from the bank, still polite. Month 2, a firmer letter, the phrase "cure the default" begins appearing. Month 3, notice of default filed with the county clerk. That's the one that matters. Once it's filed, it's public record, searchable by anyone, and the clock starts its formal countdown toward a trustee's sale. I canceled the transfers in April. The first missed payment was May. The late fee letter would arrive in early June. Raymond wouldn't open it. He hadn't opened bank mail in 4 years because until April, the bank had never had anything urgent to say. The default notice demand would come in mid-June. The notice of default would be filed and mailed to Sycamore Ridge Road sometime in early July. The wedding was July 26th. I did the math at my desk above the conference room, looking at the calendar on the wall. Notice of default mailing approximately July 18th to 21st. Wedding, July 26th. 5 days to a week. I didn't need to do anything extraordinary, I just needed to wait. But I added one piece. Raymond ignores envelopes from the bank. He will not ignore an envelope in my handwriting. I would pull a certified copy of the notice of default from the county clerk's office myself, address it personally, and time the delivery. A title examiner's version of a closing gift. Donna called me every week through May and June with wedding updates. I listened. It had the quality of a guided tour through a gallery of things that had been bought with money that was never theirs to spend. The florist confirmed the delivery, hydrangeas and eucalyptus everywhere, $6,500. That's roughly 6 months of the mortgage payment I was making. The caterer's final invoice came through, $19,000 for the full dinner service with open bar. That's 34% of the $55,000 I paid over 4 years. The photographer is incredible, 5,500. She shot for a regional magazine, so she was worth every dollar. 15 months of auto pay on the mortgage and insurance combined. The venue balance was due in full, 31,000 including deposit and service fees. The jazz trio confirmed. Dev sent me a photo of Simone trying on her dress in the boutique. Ivory, fitted at the waist, small buttons down the back. She was radiant. She was genuinely radiant. And she had no idea that dress and everything around it had been purchased with the proceeds from a property that should have been in my name. I bought my dress for the wedding at a consignment shop on a Wednesday. Burgundy. Simple neckline, $32. I would be the least expensive person at an $87,000 event. That felt correct. My neighbor growing up on Sycamore Ridge Road was a man named Harold Ossie. He's 67 now, a retired mail carrier who has lived in the house directly across from my parents for 22 years. Harold sees everything from his front porch because he has the patience of a man who spent 30 years watching addresses. He came into Holt and Callaway in June about an easement issue with the drainage ditch on his property line. Standard case. I handled it. Afterward, we had tea in the small break room by the copy machine. Harold stirred his cup and looked at me with the quiet certainty of a man who has nothing left to prove to anyone. I see the cars that come and go from your parents' house, Priya. I've seen yours, bringing groceries, showing up in the rain when the gutter was pulling away from the roof. And I've seen your brother's car. He paused. It's been there twice in 14 months. He set down his spoon. Your mother thinks Dev hung the moon. But the moon doesn't fix gutters. Whatever is happening in your family, and something is happening, I can tell by how your stepfather has been carrying himself lately, like a man waiting for a verdict. You have people who see you, more than you know. I thanked him. He left. I sat with his words for a long time. The moon doesn't fix gutters. May passed. Raymond noticed nothing. The late fee letter arrived in early June. He opened it because it looked unusual, thicker than the routine statements he filed without reading. Your mortgage payment is 52 days past due. Failure to cure within 30 days may result in acceleration of the total outstanding balance. Raymond called the bank. There must be an error, he said. We've been on auto pay. The representative pulled the account. Mr. Reeves, our records show your last payment was received in April. No payment has been received since. That's not possible. I've had auto pay set up for years. Your recurring payment was initiated from an external account, sir. That authorization was canceled in April. Raymond sat in his car in a grocery store parking lot and stared at nothing for 40 minutes. He went home and got online for the first time in 4 years and pulled up his payment history. There it was. $980 a month from an external routing number he didn't recognize. 47 consecutive months. And then April, the last one. Then nothing. Raymond sat with that screen and understood two things simultaneously. Someone had been paying his mortgage for 4 years without telling him, and they had stopped the same week Priya came to his backyard and said, "You sold my grandmother's house." He called on a Tuesday evening. I was upstairs at the law office eating leftover soup and reviewing a title abstract. "Dad calling," my phone said. I let it ring 4 times. Then I answered. "Was it you?" "No hello." "No opener, just that." "Was what me?" "The mortgage. Someone's been paying my mortgage from an external account since 2020. Auto pay. 47 payments. Stopped in April. Was that you?" Silence. Then yes. His breathing changed, audible through the phone. "Why would you do that and not tell me?" "Because I found your past due notices in November 2020, and I knew if I told you, you'd refuse the help, and then you'd lose the house." A long pause. I could hear the television in the background at their house, the low murmur of a news program neither of them was watching. "And you stopped in April. I stopped because you sold my home without telling me." A silence. Then, very quietly, "Can you start again?" I had been waiting for that sentence. "No, Raymond, I cannot." He didn't argue. He hung up. Raymond told Donna on a Wednesday night in late June. "I wasn't there. The account I got came through Dev, who heard it from Simone, who heard it from Donna in fragments over 3 phone calls spread across a weekend. Raymond told her everything. His job loss. The $42,000 across 3 credit cards she never knew existed. The sale of the Birchwood townhouse, $178,000. With $87,000 going to the wedding and vendor deposits, $31,000 to clear the credit card debt, and $60,000 set aside as what Raymond called a cushion. He also told her about the mortgage. 4 years. $55,225, paid every month without interruption by the stepdaughter whose home he had sold. Donna didn't respond at first. Then she said, "She's been paying our mortgage since 2020? And you sold her townhouse? The one her grandmother left her specifically?" I was told Donna put her head on the dining room table and stayed there for several minutes. Then she sat up and said, "We have to cancel the wedding." Raymond said they'd lose the deposits, at least $60,000 already committed to non-refundable vendor contracts. Donna looked at him and said what needed to be said. "Raymond, we already lost more than that a long time ago. The neighbors heard what happened after that. Harold O.C. definitely heard it from across the street. The sound of a man finally emptying the suitcase he'd been carrying. They didn't cancel. I knew they wouldn't." Sunk cost is the most powerful gravitational force in family decision-making. I see it in closings. People will spend the second half of a bad deal to justify the first half. 130 RSVPs confirmed. Deposits gone. Vendors booked through the end of July. Dev and Simone had been told only that there were some financial complications and that everything was being managed. Donna confirmed the floral delivery. She approved the final seating chart. But the joy had calcified into something else. Every line item now had a shadow cost she couldn't stop reading. Raymond made one mortgage payment in June from the cash reserve, $980. Then the final vendor invoices arrived. Catering balance, venue balance, photographer's final payment. Raymond looked at the cash reserve and looked at the mortgage and chose the wedding for the second time. He had chosen it first when he signed the deed at the Birchwood closing. He chose it again in June when he let the mortgage slide to pay the caterer. The notice of default was filed with the Cedarfield County Clerk's office on July 10th. I checked from my desk on my lunch break. It was there. I drove over during a break, pulled a certified copy, addressed the envelope in my own handwriting to Raymond and Donna Reeves at Sycamore Ridge Road, and dropped it in the mail on July 15th, 11 days before the wedding. The rehearsal dinner was July 22nd, a small Italian place in downtown Cedarfield, 28 people, red check tablecloths, a prix-fixe menu, a cake Simone's aunt made herself. Affordable, human. One of the few things about this wedding that was. I wore the $32 dress, sat near the middle of the long table with Elliot's hand on my knee. Raymond sat at one end with 2 glasses of wine in front of him before the bread arrived. His face was the face of a man attending a ceremony he'd already buried. Donna smiled and kept smiling, and the smile never got anywhere near her eyes. Loretta Vega, Simone's mother, 53, a physical therapist in Roanoke with quick, observant eyes, sat down next to me during dessert and said, almost offhandedly, "You doing okay, honey?" "I'm fine, Mrs. Vega." She laughed softly. "I'm a PT. I've been watching bodies tell the truth for 25 years. You're fine the way your stepfather's fine." She said it without edge, just data. I gave her a real smile. The first one in a while. She didn't push. She filed it away and moved back to her seat. 2 days later, she'd understand exactly what she'd been reading. Dev called the night before his wedding. I was in my narrow room above the law office, sitting on the edge of the bed with Leela's photo on the nightstand and a case file open on my laptop that I'd stopped reading an hour ago. My phone lit up. Dev. He was giddy, talking fast, voice higher than usual. Priya, I'm getting married tomorrow. I can't even explain how I feel. Simone's at her mom's and I'm just sitting here in my hotel room at 11 at night and I can't sleep. Are you happy for me? I closed my eyes. I was happy for him. I have always been happy for my brother. I love Dev the same way I loved him when he was 7 and scared during thunderstorms and would sneak into my room and curl up at the foot of my bed without saying a word. None of that had changed. What had changed was knowing what the chair he'd sit in tomorrow cost and where the money to pay for it had actually come from. Yes, Dev, I'm happy for you. You sure? A pause. Then, I don't tell you enough, Priya, but you're the person I've always looked up to most. You've always been the one who just handles things. I don't know how you do it. I looked at Leela's photo. $55,000 worth of handling things and a townhouse I'd never sleep in again. Get some rest, Dev. Big day tomorrow. I love you, Priya. Love you too. I hung up, sat for a long time. Grandma, I said to the photograph, I'm sorry for what's about to happen, but you always told me to stop carrying things that aren't mine to carry. July 26th. I dressed in the room above the law office. Burgundy dress, flat sandals, Leela's gold studs, which she'd bought from a jeweler in downtown Cedarfield the year I turned 21, pressing them into my palm and saying, gold for the girl who doesn't need anyone to notice. Elliot picked me up at 8. Dark gray suit, freshly shaved. He drove without the radio on because he knows me. At a red light on Route 15, I checked the USPS tracking number on my phone. The certified envelope addressed in my own handwriting to Raymond and Donna Reeves at Sycamore Ridge Road. Status, delivered. July 22nd, signed by Raymond Reeves, 4 days ago. He had held the notice of default in his hands, signed for it, read the words, notice of trustee sale proceedings, and still put on a suit and drove his son to Whitmore Estate. He had chosen the wedding a 3rd time. First when he signed the deed transfer, second when he paid the vendors instead of the mortgage, third when he accepted a foreclosure notice and drove to a venue instead of a bank. Elliot turned into the Whitmore Estate entrance, white tents on the lawn, valets in dark vests, a jazz trio warming up near the terrace arch, hydrangeas wrapped around every column, 130 white chairs on a carpet of manicured grass, an $87,000 event purchased with my grandmother's love. Ready? Elliot asked. I've been ready since April. The ceremony was beautiful. I want to say that clearly because it was true. Whatever came next, my brother got married on a warm July afternoon under a cloudless sky, and it was genuinely beautiful. Dev cried before Simone reached the halfway point of the aisle. She walked toward him in her ivory dress, her father's hand on her arm, and the whole crowd did that thing crowds do when a bride appears, that collective catch of breath. And Dev just stood there crying openly, making no effort to stop. Raymond walked Simone's side of the family to their seats with his jaw set and his eyes moving too quickly, scanning exits the way a man scans exits when he knows the building is on fire and nobody else does. Donna was in the front row. She cried through the whole ceremony, both hands pressed to her mouth. From where I sat, 3 rows back with Elliot, I could see that it wasn't all joy. There was a tightness in her shoulders, a flinch beneath the tears. Guilt and grief look identical from a distance. You have to be close enough to see what's underneath to tell them apart. The rings, the vows, the kiss. Rice thrown in the afternoon light like scattered gold. Dev and Simone walked back up the aisle together laughing, and Dev found my eyes in the crowd and pointed at me with both hands like he used to do when we were kids, and he'd just done something he was proud of. I pointed back. That's how we say I love you in our family. Has been since he was 9. The reception hall at Whitmore Estate had the look of a magazine spread that knows it's being photographed. Crystal pendants hanging from the ceiling above every table. Ivory linens and gold candle holders. A champagne tower near the entrance. 5 tiers of coupes with Prosecco cascading down the outside in slow golden streams. The jazz trio on a small riser near the back wall, an open bar with a handwritten chalk sign listing signature cocktails, one called the Vega Swing and one called Simone Says. The math entered my head before I reached my seat and wouldn't leave. Open bar, at minimum $5,000. Centerpieces, $3,500. The trio, $4,000. Favors, linens, rentals, another $7,000. Every number in that room was denominated in months of transfers I had made quietly from my checking account to keep my parents housed while my stepfather signed away my home. Raymond worked the room like a man who had practiced looking relaxed. He clapped backs and accepted handshakes and smiled wide, but his eyes didn't settle on anything. The eyes of a man who signed for a foreclosure notice 4 days ago and is standing inside the thing that caused it, trying to keep the room from noticing. Donna tracked me across the room the way a person watches the one variable they can't control. She knew the case. She didn't know when I planned to rest it. Toast time. The jazz trio finished a number. Raymond stood, took the microphone from the band leader, buttoned his jacket with one hand. The room quieted. He started with the standard material. Dev as a kid, Simone's grace, how proud he and Donna were. The room laughed at the right moments. Raymond is good at rooms. He's been performing steadiness his whole life. Tonight was just the largest venue he'd ever had. Then he went off script. He lowered his voice. Got quiet in the way people get quiet when they want the room to lean in. Donna and I would do anything for our children. Anything. We've made hard choices. We've sacrificed when it wasn't easy. But this, he said, gesturing at the room, this is what you do for the people you love. This is the best gift we've ever given. He raised his glass. The room raised theirs. Applause, the honest kind. The kind from people who don't know what they're applauding. I was at table 9. I did not raise my glass. I looked at Raymond across the candlelight and the champagne tower and the hydrangeas, and he looked at me. 2 seconds of nothing between us but $178,000 and 4 years of payments on a house he still might lose. He looked away first. He came to table 9 10 minutes later. Donna behind him, holding a champagne glass she hadn't touched. Raymond leaned down and spoke quietly. Priya, I know this is complicated, but tonight is Dev's night. Whatever needs to be said, can it wait until tomorrow? I looked up at him. I used the voice I use in depositions, the one that doesn't carry and doesn't waver. I heard your toast, Raymond. Best gift you've ever given. That's what you said. He nodded carefully. You gave Dev something beautiful, and I want you to know I gave you something too. 4 years of it, in fact. Go check your front door. The color left his face so completely and so fast that Donna grabbed his arm. She pulled him toward the hallway off the main entrance, the carpeted corridor between the coat check and the restrooms. I stayed seated. Elliot put his hand over mine. We watched through the open doors as Raymond and Donna stood in the hallway and began talking in urgent, low voices that rose and stopped and rose again. Dev noticed. He and Simone had been on the small dance floor near the jazz trio, and he stopped mid-step and watched his parents disappear into the hallway. He crossed the room. Mom, what's happening? Donna looked at Raymond. Raymond looked at the carpet. Then Donna did it the way you do it when the wait has been too long and the room is too small. She said it fast. Your stepfather sold Priya's townhouse, the one Leela left her. He sold it to pay for tonight. The hallway went quiet in a specific way, the kind that has texture. Dev looked at the hydrangea centerpiece visible through the open doorway. He looked at the champagne tower. He looked at Simone beside him. The entire $87,000 suddenly repriced itself behind his eyes. What? No. You said you had savings. Raymond opened his mouth. There were no savings, Dev. Simone's mother, Loretta, appeared at the edge of the hallway. I got up from table 9 and walked toward them. Dev turned when he saw me. Is it true? Yes. Raymond sold the Birchwood townhouse. Leela left it to me in her will. He never transferred the deed, which as executor he was legally required to do. Instead, he sold it to pay for this. I didn't gesture at the room. I didn't have to. Dev looked at the dress Simone was wearing. The dress he knew had cost $3,800. He looked at his sister in her $32 consignment shop dress and his grandmother's gold studs. Priya, I would never have wanted this. You know that. I know that, Dev. But you also never asked where the money was coming from. And that's a question worth asking. Raymond pushed off the wall. He was searching for the version of himself that gives toasts and shakes hands and says we're covered. He couldn't locate it. Priya, this is Dev's wedding day. If we could just get through tonight and talk about this properly tomorrow. I looked at him calmly. We can talk about it now because there's something else neither you nor Mom knew. I'm going to say it plainly. I've been paying your mortgage since November 2020, $980 a month, plus $195 for homeowners insurance, $55,225 over 47 months. I started because I found your past due notices on your kitchen counter and I didn't want you to lose the house. I stopped in April, the same week I found out you'd sold mine. Donna's hand went to her chest. And the notice of default that was delivered to your front door on July 22nd, the one Raymond signed for, that's what happens when the person quietly keeping your house decides to stop because you took hers. Loretta Vega was standing at the edge of the hallway. She looked from Raymond to the reception hall behind me, to the chandelier and the tower of champagne coupes, and she said it plainly. You sold your stepdaughter's inheritance to pay for a party she wasn't told about, and she was the one paying your mortgage the whole time. Raymond sat down on the hallway bench. Not a choice. A collapse. His legs made the decision. Donna turned to me. Mascara tracking down both cheeks. Why didn't you ever tell us? My voice didn't change. Why didn't you tell me you were selling my home? The jazz trio was still playing. Guests were still dancing. Most of them had no idea that the floor of this family had just buckled. But everyone in this hallway knew everything. I didn't stop helping because I stopped loving you, I said. I stopped because you taught me that the things I gave didn't count. So I stopped giving. I turned to Dev. He was between Simone and her mother. His bow tie was slightly loose. His eyes were wet, but he hadn't cried yet. He looked like a man holding a very large and unexpected weight and trying to figure out how to distribute it. This is your wedding, I told him. It should stay yours. Go back in there. Dance with your wife. Cut the cake. Be happy. How can I, knowing all of this? Because none of this is your fault, Dev. You didn't know. But you know now. And what you do, going forward, is what matters. Simone put her hand on his arm. Loretta put her arm around Donna's shoulders the way nurses and healers do. Not because they approve, but because people still need holding when they've broken something. I took Elliot's hand. We walked down the hallway toward the front entrance, past the coat check, past the guest sign-in table, past the framed portrait of Dev and Simone at their engagement shoot, laughing in a field somewhere, looking like people who had no idea what was coming. The valet brought Elliot's truck. He opened my door. I got in. He walked around and got in and started the engine. We drove out through the estate gates with the windows down and didn't speak for several miles. There wasn't anything left that needed saying. Behind us, the reception continued. Dev and Simone danced. The trio played. The champagne tower stood. But the evening had a fracture running through it now, and every person in that hallway knew exactly where it had started. Raymond applied for a loan modification the following week. Hardship filing. Blue Ridge Federal agreed to a restructured plan, $650 a month for a year, with the arrears folded into the back end of the loan. He took a part-time shift at a distribution warehouse on the north side of Cedarfield, loading and unloading freight 3 nights a week. 61 years old, stiff knees, loading dock. Nobody sold anyone's property this time. He paid with his body because the other assets were gone. Donna consulted a real estate attorney in Arlington. Not Margaret Holt. She knew better than that. The attorney confirmed what I'd already documented. Raymond's sale of the Birchwood property constituted a clear breach of his fiduciary duty as executor. The will was unambiguous. The transfer had no legal justification. There was a very strong case for damages equal to the full sale price. Donna called Raymond. Raymond called me. I didn't answer. Donna called Dev. Dev called me. I answered. They want to settle. Will you sit down with them? Tell them to have their attorney contact Margaret Holt's office. Raymond signed the settlement agreement in September. The full sale price, $178,000, repaid in structured installments. Raymond would be making payments until he was 74. His choice. He made it. Dev and Simone returned the wedding gifts from the registry for items they didn't open yet and donated the cash equivalent to me. Through a Venmo transfer they insisted on sending in 3 parts because the amounts felt smaller that way, and they couldn't bring themselves to send it all at once. $6,400. A fraction, but it moved in the right direction. Margaret Holt made the promotion formal in August. The nameplate outside my door read, Priya Anand, Senior Title Examiner. Elliot and I signed a lease on a 2-bedroom apartment in North Cedarfield. My name first on the lease. His name on the utilities. Clean title. Leela's bookshelf went in the corner of the living room, right where it had always stood, holding the Tamil poetry and the recipe cards. Her photograph went on the windowsill. I did not restart the mortgage transfers. Raymond handled it himself. Barely between the warehouse shifts and the modification payment and the settlement installments, but he handled it. His house, his mortgage, his responsibility. I was done carrying it. Dev called every Sunday, not to talk about the wedding photos or the honeymoon or the thank you card envelopes, just to talk. We were building something new, something that didn't depend on me holding the ground while he floated above it, something where we could both stand level and keep our eyes open. Donna sent a card in October. No letter, no defense, no explanation, just one line in her careful handwriting. I'm so sorry, Priya. Not enough, but a start. I put it in the drawer next to Leela's photo. Raymond didn't apologize with words. He showed up at the new apartment one Saturday morning in November with his toolbox. He asked quietly if there was anything that needed attention. Elliot let him in. They spent 2 hours together fixing a slow kitchen drain and re-caulking the bathroom tile, and they didn't talk much, and that was fine. A man can only say what his tools allow him to say. Raymond's language has always been literal. He was using the only vocabulary he had left. Leela's teak bookshelf stood in the corner of the living room, still full, still standing. Right where it belonged, in the home of the granddaughter she'd meant it for all along. Here's what I learned. The person in a family who handles things quietly will always be expected to handle them quietly, and the things they handle will never be noticed until they stop. I paid $55,000. I paid 4 years of silence. I gave my grandmother's townhouse and the future I had planned, and I never once asked for credit or gratitude or even acknowledgement. And it was never going to be enough, because what they were taking wasn't really my money. It was my willingness to keep quiet while they took it. The day I stopped being quiet was the day the entire structure came apart. $178,000, an $87,000 wedding, 4 years of invisible payments, and 5 words at a rehearsal dinner that changed everything. Go check your front door. If this story reminded you that the person giving the most is always the last one anyone thinks to ask, share it with someone who needs to hear it. I'll see you next time.